Chaye Balei Chochma, the life of the people of who are people of wisdom, Umavaksheha, the people that seek wisdom without, even if they're not yet Balei Chochma, but they seek wisdom without Torah is like death. That's the language of the Rambam. And maybe we could say the language of the Rambam is very, is very exact. That specifically people who are Balei Chachma, people who are people of wisdom, or people who seek to learn, who want to learn, who want to grow, who started tasting Torah, they understand that without Torah, they're missing a life. It's like that. But the other people out there don't realize they're missing a life. You'll ask them, do they think they're missing in life when they're not learning Torah? They think they're fine, they're living well, they think. But that's what the Rambam is saying. The Torah is telling us that every Jew needs to be on the level, has to realize that this is life, but the only ones who might realize it are the people who are Balei Chachma U'Mavaksheha, the people who are people of Torah, people who seek Torah. Those are the people who understand that without Torah, it's mitah. It's considered like death. They're missing a life. The person is involved with chesed organizations. That's great, but if he's not involved in Torah, he's missing in life. That explains also that the Gemara in Brachot. The Gemara says, "Noshim b'may zachyan." What's the schus that the women have to make it to Olam Haba and so on and so forth? And look at that Gemara. The question, what's the Gemara's question of a might happen, right? The Gemara has a question. Women might happen. And the Gemara says, meaning what do women do that they should be worthy of let's say Olam Haba? And the Gemara says, right. The Gemara says, because they wait for their husbands when they come back from the Beit Midrash, they go ahead and they help take the kids to the yeshiva. So that the Gemara says, the merit of that's how the zocher in the next world to great things. So there's a famous question. Why does the Gemara, since the Gemara in Yud Zayin in Brachot, the Gemara says, Noshim b'may zachin. Does Rashi say anything b'may zachin? Rashi didn't translate b'may zachin. Let's see how the commentaries say. Noshim b'may zachin. So the way they translate over here, through what deeds do the women zoche olam haba? And the Gemara says, because they bring the children to the shul to learn Torah, they send the husbands to the yeshivot, and they're waiting for them, for the husbands to come back. So what's the Gemara's question, Nashim Ma'izachim? The women have so many mitzvot. They have so many mitzvot. They have to keep Shabbat and all that. So what's the Gemara's question of Ma'izachim? What merit do they have that they should get the next world? So some of the commentators explain, because the ticket to that, you need, the Gemara talking about, they need to have the connection to Torah in order to get that certain level of reward that the Gemara is referring to. And how could they get that reward if they themselves don't have the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? And women don't have the mitzvah of learning Torah the way men have. Women are patur from Talmud Torah, women are obligated to do mitzvot that have to do with them, and they're obligated to learn, they need to learn all the laws about the mitzvot that have to do with them. But when they're learning the laws of the mitzvot that have to do with them, it's not because of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. It's because of the mitzvah in order to be able to perform the mitzvot. So their learning is more of a preparation for the mitzvah. The men's learning is a mitzvah in itself. When a man learns Torah, and then he performs the mitzvah, the Torah study was a mitzvah in itself, and the performance of the mitzvah was a mitzvah in itself. He was obligated to study the Torah. He got credit for one mitzvah. And he was obligated to do the mitzvah. He learned about tefillin. So he gets the mitzvah of learning Torah when he learns about tefillin, and he gets the mitzvah of tefillin when he put on the tefillin. When the women learn the Lacha Shabbat, then they don't get credit for it. They're not doing this. It's not that they're getting credit for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah that they're obligated in. They're just doing what they need to do in order to know how to perform the mitzvah of Shabbat. That's how the Beit HaLevi explains. So we see that the power of needing to be connected with Torah is such a powerful point in order to, so to speak, live. To live in the next world on the level that needs to be lived, you need to can be connected with the item that represents true life, which is Torah. Because Torah is life, and therefore to get life, you need to be connected with the life. So therefore, perhaps that's the midah keneged midah. When you're connected with Torah in this world, then you involve with life, real life, then you're going to get the real life in the next world. So that's what the Gemara says over here. That's called life. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yochanan, Harav Shegol, a rabbi that went to Golut. The rabbi unintentionally killed somebody. Migalin yeshivoto imo. His yeshiva has to go to the exile. His yeshiva has to go to the exile. Now, why does his yeshiva have to go to the exile? Because in order, as a rabbi, for him to grow, one of the things that's going to cause him to grow is his Talmidim. The Talmidim ask questions, and as a result of their questions, he comes up with answers. Things become clear to the rabbi. Like we'll see the Gemara that says he learned mitalmidai yosta mikulam. He learned the most Torah. We'll see later from who? More than learning from his colleagues and more than learn from his rabbis, he learned from his talmidim. Mitalmidai yosta mikulam. So therefore, and the pasuk says, "Good morning, Jaime.
Good morning.
Good to see you back."
Thank you. Happy to be back.
We are on Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. We are on 11. Yud Amud Aleph 10a. 10a in the Art Scroll. This was probably 10a 3.
Thank you. I have it.
Very good. 10a 3, and on the page that we're up to is the top. We're up to the top of the page. Top of the page, 10a3. We just said, the Gemara, just to bring you up to date, the Gemara says that when it comes to Golut, when a person goes to exile, if he killed someone unintentionally, the Torah says, V'chai, he has to live. You have to make sure that he lives in exile. We have to do things that will help him live. We have to make sure there's proper water supply, there's proper markets in the place of exile. People have proper food buying, we don't create a city of refuge of a village. A village wouldn't be enough because it's hard to buy food. There's not too much food in the village. You have to have a place where the guy can really live, have proper sustenance. And then the Gemara says that included in making sure that the person will live is making sure that he has his rabbi that he studied Torah with before he did the murder, the unintentional murder. He needs to be able to be connected with the rabbi that he learned with, has a responsibility to go to exile with the student. Because in order to make the student live, part of living is having Torah in one's life. And if he doesn't, as a student, as someone who's a student, it's interesting, the language of the Gemara is Talmid shagala, student that went to exile. A student who went to exile, that's who you send. You send the rabbi. Good morning, Dr. Navid. The rabbi of that student needs to go to exile with the rabbi. If he's not a student, if someone who's not a student, who doesn't have any rabbi, and he kills someone unintentionally, we don't have to send that. We don't have to volunteer a rabbi. He has to move in with him. But a student, that he already is a student. A student means you're seeking to study, seeking to learn. You want to grow. That's what it means to be a student. So if you're a student, you want to grow. It's missing in life if the student doesn't have his rabbi. If a student doesn't have Torah in his life from his rabbi, it's missing in quality of life. One area. And the Rambam says, amazing language. The Rambam says a person was a man of chachma, a man of wisdom, or a person who seeks wisdom, like a Talmud. A Talmud, I think, would be the one who seeks wisdom. Without the study of Torah, it's considered like, to him, it's considered like death. Some people in life, if they don't travel, they don't take a vacation, they think they're not living. That's how some people, I think, I'm correct in that analysis. I think there might be some people that feel that way. People that they feel that certain things, if they don't have in their life, they're not living. But that's not, but a person who's a Talmud, or someone's a student of Torah, to him, what's not called living? Not having a rabbi, not studying Torah. And the Torah says you have to make sure the guy who goes to exile lives. So how do you accomplish that? Both in a physical sense, you have to make sure he has the food and the water supply that he needs, right, Dr. Navid? But also in the spiritual sense. You have to make sure his rabbi goes with him to the exile. Then the Gemara says it not only works, that's not only when the two students kills unintentionally, if the rabbi killed unintentionally, the rabbi fell down the ladder, if someone's bottom of the ladder, he killed someone, and the rabbi goes into exile, you know who has to go into exile with him? His students have to go into exile with him. Why? Because the rabbi who doesn't have students to teach, he's talking to the wall. He's not going to grow the way he needs to grow as a rabbi. A rabbi needs to grow. And how does a rabbi grow the most? He grows the most through his students. You hear that, Ariel? The rabbi grows them. Why? The students ask a question. And then the rabbi see, oh, here's the question. And he explains it, and it becomes even clearer to him. I remember hearing from Rabbi David Feinstein of Olav Shalom. He said that there was he said over the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish were brother-in-laws. And Rabbi Yochanan was like more the leading rabbi. And when he would ask a question, he would say something. He would say a statement, halacha. Reish Lakish would challenge and ask on the rabbi. He would ask from here, from all over. And the rabbi would answer the question. He will explain, this is different, that has different laws, things that look alike, that will show the differences, the nuances. And as a result of that, everything became clearer. But then when Reish Lakish passed away, so other people took his seat at the table, and when Rabbi Yochanan would say something, he would say a law, the new students would say, Rabbi, I have a support for you. They didn't question the rabbi's law. They just said, I have a support. I found a proof for you over here, proof for you over here. Nobody challenged the rabbi's law by bringing a possible question on the rabbi's law. And you know what happened? Rabbi Yochanan said, this is not life. Rabbi Yochanan didn't want it, felt he wouldn't, in a certain sense, we have to see the Gemara again, like this is not living. Because I'm not growing as a rabbi. Because if everybody just says, you're right, no one asks a question on what I'm saying, then I'm not gonna grow from that. I'm not gaining, it's not becoming clearer to me. It becomes clearer to me when I have a question, I have to think how to explain the differences in these places. You know, it's also similar like Rabbi Feinstein of Shalom, also the same Rabbi David Feinstein said, when a person looks for a wife, look for a woman, everybody listening, everyone's married here, but if you know anybody's looking for a wife, look for someone who's able to say something. Not everything you say, she just says, yes, meaning to say, of course, a good wife does what the husband wants. But meaning, if you say something, she can maybe show you a different angle. And then you could say, like, that's how he translates Ezer Kenegdo, a helpmate that's Kenegdo, against him. So here's the question: what do you mean, Esla is the Kenegdo? You want a wife that's against you, opposing you? You want a wife that's what? That's everything, that's with you, that's for you. He says, no. When you look for a wife, she has her own mind. Of course, she has her own mind, but she wants to work together. We want to communicate. We want to come to a conclusion together. We respect each other's opinion, and then we come to a conclusion. But an Eze Kenegdo, you hear that? Ariel, is that fascinating? Therefore, for all the young marrieds, if you have a wife that has her own mind, don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as a positive. And then now just to figure out how to work together, she sees it this way, you see it that way, and things can become clearer as a result of that. Jaime, what do you say to that, Jaime?
Rabbi, whose wife saved him from the Korach? What's his name who was saved by his wife?
On Ben Pelet.
On
Ben Pelet's wife, she saved his life.
That's a good wife. That's a good wife.
That's a great wife. She went against, she told the husband, what do you gain by putting part of the fight? If Moshe wins, Moshe's the winner. If Korach wins, Korach's the winner. You don't get anything on the deal. She talked sense.
A lot of sechel, a lot on her part.
Right. And then she had her own mind. She had her own mind, but she used it properly with respect. And she told the husband, and she talked sense to him. What do you say? What do you say, Dr. Levitt? Fascinating, beautiful, like this? Amazing. And therefore they should have hope. Husbands could respect their wives more as a result of this. Right? Am I correct, everybody? Dr. Mr. Safdie, what do you say? Absolutely. Okay, very good. But what? We always have to spend Shalom Bayit. And exactly, the Yetzer Hara always wants to cause problems. You could be married 2 years, 10 years, 25. You find people 25 years, they're married and they get divorced. To me, it's amazing. Was it Isab Shot? They're married 25 years. They were never happy to begin with? Or no? They were happily married for many years, I would say. I mean, I haven't done a survey. But the Yetzer Hara tries to bring people down. That's his job. And he tries to get the relationship to go sour. After so many years, they were happy. They loved each other. So what happened? You loved each other so much before you got married. You were married for a number of years. You loved each other. And then it went sour. Because the Yetzer Hara, that's his job, like Mr. Safdie said. He's trying to always make machloket. Okay, back to the Gemara. So now the Gemara is teaching us a new lesson in what's called life. We're now in the Hebrew, we're on Yud Amen Aleph, 10a. We are on about 10 lines into the wide lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines into the wide lines. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, towards the end of the line. Harav Shagala Migalin Yeshivotu Imo. The rabbi that goes to exile, his yeshiva needs to go with him. Not because the yeshiva guys need to learn. That's not the reason why they have to go with him into exile. They have to go with him into exile because he needs to live. And he's not living without having the students. Because, like we explained, because of what the students do for the rabbi. So the Gemara says, the following. Aini, is that so? For Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Minayin l'divrei Torah she'hen kol din. How do we know? We have a pasuk that the Minayin, how do we know? The divrei Torah, that words of Torah, she'hen kol din, they capture the person. They are a refuge for the person. How do we know that the Torah words itself is an escape, is a place of refuge? We all know that there's 6 main cities of refuge. So the Gemara understands Rabbi Yochanan's statement, literally, that the Gemara understands at this point, that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that the words of Torah itself is a place of refuge. That if you learn Torah, you are safe from the Gol Adam. That the guy who wants to, the same way you go into a city of refuge, when you're there, you're safe. You're in a safe space because the Gol Adam, the relative of the victim who got killed, cannot come into the exile to kill. If you made it into home base, so to speak, you made it into exile, he can't kill over there. So the Gemara thinks that when Rabbi Yochanan uses a similar language that's found by cities of refuge, when it comes to the study of Torah, the Gemara understands Rabbi Yochanan is saying the same thing, that if you're involved in Torah study, that in itself is you're safe. You're safe. You don't need the Gol Adam can't touch you. That's what he understands. So why does he have to go ahead and bring his yeshiva with him? He's safe without going into exile. Why does he have to go to exile at all? The Gemara says, how do we know that the words of Torah itself are a place of refuge? Shenema. When the Torah talks about the cities that Moshe Rabbeinu designated for miklat, the word of kolet, cities of refuge, it says, Et Betze Bamidbar. Betze was one of the 3 cities that he designated. And then right after it talks about the designations of the cities for refuge, the pasuk says, Uktiv Basrei V'zot HaTorah, famous pasuk. V'zot HaTorah Shesam Moshe L'Bnei Yisrael. And this is the Torah that Moshe gave to the Bnei Yisrael. And what's the connection between the separation of cities of refuge to this unique pasuk? And this is the Torah. This is the Torah. Why are we connecting Torah to the cities of refuge? So he says it's coming to teach us that the same way the cities are cities of protection for the one who killed unintentionally, so too the Torah itself serves as a place of refuge and saves him. So therefore, what is the need for the rabbi to go to exile? Why does the rabbi of students have to go to exile? He's safe. Why is he safe? Because the words of Torah itself, he's constantly involved in the words of Torah. So the words of Torah itself will protect him. Mr. Safdie, here's the Gemara. It's so amazing that the Gemara takes Rabbi Yochanan literally. And we're going to see one answer of the Gemara is going to go with this. Look at the power of Torah study. Ariel, unbelievable. That the power of Torah is that the words of Torah will save him from the Gol Adam. It's true what happened. It's true. You're right, Mr. Safdie. It did happen. Even though he was a Torah scholar, even though he was a rabbi, he fell down the ladder. He killed someone unintentionally. But you know what? You ever heard? That's called the perks, right? That's a kosher perk. That's a kosher benefit of being a rabbi. Because being the rabbi, you are involved. That's the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan is saying, being a rabbi, when you're studying Torah, that's the power of Torah. The power of Torah is that will save you. That in itself is a place. That's a place of refuge. So according to this understanding, he would not have to go to Golut. He doesn't have to go to exile. He killed unintentionally. He doesn't have to go to exile. And maybe you could explain what could be the logic behind it. Perhaps we could suggest, because the whole thing about Golut is that the guy killed unintentionally. That means, but there was some level of negligence, small level of negligence. But perhaps the rabbi, and therefore by going to Golut, it's a rehabilitation. He's going to learn more about the importance of life, and he won't take certain risks, and he'll be more careful that there won't be to prevent murder. But perhaps the rabbi who's constantly involved in that process, so maybe he doesn't need that lesson like the other person needs it. So even though the rabbi might have slipped, maybe literally and in other ways, that he fell off the ladder and he maybe could have been more careful, but the fact that he's constantly involved in Torah study, he's going to get that lesson, and he'll be all right by being involved in the Torah. What do you want to say, Ariel? But we'll protect him from the one who wants to avenge the blood of his relative. How? By just being the same way you go to the city of refuge. It will protect you. So just being involved in Torah study will serve as a protection. You'll be safe. Talk about Dr. Navid. Talk a little louder. Everybody wants to hear your holy voice.
Something I learned, I think it was Gemara Pesachim, I think.
Yes.
It talks about the boy who goes up the ladder. If you listen to a mitzvah, if you're doing a mitzvah, you're protected. Then they said no, because if your thought was wrong, then you're not protected. Then they said if you learn Torah, you're protected, but you're not if you sin. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
thing. So how does that relate to this? I don't remember the exact.
No,
things that we're bringing
yeah,
up.
I'm right. Okay, we have to see that Gemara in Kedushin. What? And the flip. Okay, so I want to share a question with everybody. The Gemara's question here is, the Gemara is saying that the rabbi should be exempt from going to exile. And the Gemara, look at the Gemara's answer. What's the Gemara's first answer? Lo kasha. There's no contradiction. Look at the Gemara's answer. Ha bi'idana de'asikte. When the rabbi is involved in the study of Torah, that's when the Goel Hadam cannot kill him. It would serve as a protection, but meaning it's as if he's in the city of refuge. But when do we say that he has to? The rabbi goes to Golut and he takes his students with him. There's always a time that the rabbi is not engaged in Torah study. If he's not going to be engaged in Torah study, then the rabbi is not going to learn the whole day. He's going to maybe eat. He's going to drink. He's going to have a coffee, maybe perhaps, and whatever. So maybe he's not going to be. He's going to stop for something. And if maybe he's doing some work on the side to support himself or his family. So there is time that he's not going to be learning. That time the Goel Adam could kill him. It only serves as a protection for the rabbi when he's studying the Torah. So therefore, the Gemara says, that's why he needs to go to exile, the rabbi. But he's not going to be studying Torah 24/7. And therefore, that's where the rabbi has to go to exile. But when he's engaged in Torah study, according to the first answer of the Gemara is going to move, it's being a different approach. When he's engaged in Torah study, the Goel Hadam cannot touch it. So I want to ask a question. According to this, why is it we only find this concept by the Gemara was questioning the rabbi who goes to exile, the Gemara is questioning that law. Why does he need to go to exile with the students? Why he should be safe without going to exile? But the Gemara didn't ask the question on a person who's not a rabbi, a person who is a student who studies Torah. Why does he have to go to exile? The Gemara should say the same thing. We said before in the Gemara, early in the Gemara, a student goes to exile and the rabbi has to go with him. Why does the student have to go to exile? If he's learning Torah, let him learn Torah. The Torah study should serve as a refuge. The same way the Gemara says that but the Torah connects, the Zosa Torah, Lota Torah is connected to the cities of refuge. And the Gemara said, just as the actual physical cities serve as a refuge, so the Torah itself, the Zota Torah, would also serve as a refuge. So why doesn't the Gemara say that regarding question the law of the student? Why does the student have to go to Galut? The student is engaged in Torah study, comes to the class, so that should serve as a place of refuge. Why? That's what the Gemara should have. Why is the Gemara only questioning the rabbi going to exile? Why does the rabbi go to exile? The Torah should serve as a refuge. Why does the student go to exile? The Torah should serve as a refuge. Yeah, anybody who's learning Torah, you brought a pasuk. The pasuk says the Zota Torah Shetzam Moshe. That Torah is a place of refuge. It's connected to cities of exile. Jaime, hear the question. One of the commentaries, Aruch Laner, asked this question. Why is this Aruch Laner's question? Why is the Gemara only challenging the question of why the rabbi needs to go to exile? The Gemara should challenge what if the student needs to go to exile? He should be safe because of the Torah. That's the question that he is. Is the question clear?
Yes.
So I want to share an answer that I said that he says maybe something similar, but I'll share how I said it. Mike, good to see you.
Good morning,
Good morning. The source, the pasuk that we learned that Torah is a refuge that protects you, from the pasuk of V'zot Torah, correct? V'zot Torah is written next to the cities of refuge. But the context of V'zot Torah Hashem Sam Moshe was V'zot Torah Hashem Sam Moshe Livnei Yisrael. The context of the pasuk was Moshe as the rabbi, as the teacher, talking to the Jewish people, giving over the Torah to the Jewish people. So V'zot HaTorah, that which we connect Torah to that it serves like a city of refuge, it has the same power as a city of refuge, we only find it in the context of a rabbi, of a teacher of students, teaching Torah. Because it says, V'zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Livnei Yisrael. Moshe giving the Torah to the Jewish community as a teacher of Torah, that strength of teaching others serves as a refuge. But the student himself, who's not teaching Torah to others, he does not get that privilege that it will serve as a place of refuge. How do you like that, Mr. Safdie? Beautiful answer, you like it? What do you say, Ariel? I mean, yeah, but there's people, but there were a lot of students, the whole Jewish community. There was Moshe, there was the Zakanim, but right. But you know, we have a rule called Ein ba ela chidusho. If you have a chidush, if the Torah teaches a special exception to the rule, you only could use the context that it was written. You can't extend it further. And therefore, if in the place where the Torah teaches us this chidush, this novelty, that something else besides the actual city of refuge will serve as a refuge, and that was taught in the context of Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people as a teacher of Torah, you can't extend it more than that. Oh, that's a great point, Ariel. That's a great question. Someone in the exile becomes a rab. Would he now be safe to walk out? Could he be protected? According to this first approach, it would sound yes. That's what it sounds like, because now he's a rabbi. The Torah will protect him. But again, the Gemara says it will only protect him only when he's engaged in teaching and involved with Torah. Learning. Right, doesn't say teaching, learning. Interesting, right. Right, very good. But it could be, Dr. Navid, it could be that once he is that rabbi that teaches the Torah, and everything he's learning is going to help him towards his teaching. So it could be, as long as he's involved, whether he's involved in actually teaching Torah or studying Torah, he will be protected. Okay, but the Gemara's question was only by the rabbi. That's what the Gemara only asked. But now look at the Gemara's next answer, everybody. That's answer number 1 of the Gemara. Mike 1, Yudam and Aleph, 10a. The Gemara says a different answer. If you want, I'll offer a different approach. And this, everybody is familiar with a story about David HaMelech. We all know that David HaMelech, there was a time period that he was going to pass away. And on Shabbat, the angel of death was not able to take his neshama as long as he was involved in study of Torah. And therefore, the angel of death did something to distract him. And then at the time that he was distracted, that's when the angel of death was able to take him. That's what the Gemara is going to say like this. When we say Torah is kolei, that Torah serves as a refuge, it's not referring to the case of as a refuge from the Goel Hadam, if a person killed unintentionally, now by learning Torah, he's safe. The rabbi is safe because the Torah will serve as a refuge and save him from the relative of the victim. That's not what I was referring to. The rabbi is not protected. The rabbi has to go to city of refuge. Even if he's engaged in teaching Torah, studying Torah the whole time, he will not be safe from the Gol Adam. When we say that Torah, words of Torah is a refuge, it's a refuge from what? From the angel of death, from the Malach HaMavet. In general, if it's time, the angel of death at a time period when the angel of death, let's say, might have permission sometime from God to take the person, but as long as the person is involved in Torah study, the angel of death will not have the ability to take it. My kotin, what does it mean that Torah will be a kolate, that Torah will serve as a refuge, that he'll be safe? Mimalach HaMavet. It's talking about from the angel of death. The angel of death will not be able to take the neshama of the person when he's engaged in Torah study. And the Gemara illustrates with a story. Kiha Rav Chisda. Meaning the story of David HaMelech was not unique for David HaMelech. It was unique many generations later. Rav Chisda. He was learning in the yeshiva, in the Beit Midrash. The Malach HaMavet was not able to mikrav l'gabei. He was not able to come close to him. It's like it's an imaginary wall that was. Yesterday we were in Lakewood. We ran a Shabbaton, Shabbat Yeshiva. We ran a Shabbos for college students. We ran a Shabbos, and we went to Makil Kotler, the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. We had a private meeting with him. We brought the boys. What did he say? He spoke about the Matovu Alecha Yaakov. The house, the Jewish house, is supposed to be a place of refuge. It's Matovu. It's a fortress. It separates us from the rest of the world. That's the Jewish home. And the problem is, people, when they bring all different things into their home, they're taking away that wall, that fortress, and they have to recognize that, what the Jewish home is supposed to be. So here it's saying that he was not able to get close. It was like that wall, that Ohel Yaakov, that he was not able, the Malach HaMavet was not able to get close. It's like this imaginary shield. Like, they used to put some big politicians in boxes, right? Remember, they would put them in a box to protect, you have like that box around them. You can't come close. They weren't able to come close. The lo havishat. Why was that? The lo havishatik pumei megirsa. He did not close his mouth. His mouth was not quiet from Torah study. He was studying Torah constantly. So therefore, the Malach HaMavet, in which we can explain the following. Torah is life. Malach HaMavet is death. But when a person is engaged in Torah, the angel of death can't come close. How can you come close to, you're going up against life. The angel of death represents death. The Torah represents life. So you can't come close. It doesn't match. Death can't touch life when you're involved in life. The battery is fully charged. And I want to say the language of the Gemara is, it doesn't say he was just involved in Torah study. It says his mouth was constantly learning Torah. That means when you're learning, you open up a sefer, you're learning by yourself. So when you go to a class, you're listening is like you're speaking, right? You go to a class, listening is like speaking. But when you study by yourself, there's learning, and you look at the Sefer, you look at it, you think about the Torah, you think about the laws, but there's another thing. You're not supposed to just think Torah, you're supposed to speak Torah. When you learn, you're learning, when you go ahead, let's say after we finish learning, and you finish learning, and you're going to review the Gemara, and you take out an art scroll, or whatever without art scroll, whatever you use, and you're learning the Gemara. How are you supposed to be learning? The ideal way to learn is not just to I'm reading through it without verbalizing. The higher level of Torah, even though that's a level of Torah study, you're supposed to ideally verbalize the Torah study that you're saying. And also it says, I think it says, Eitz Chaim Him Motze'eim. It's a tree of life, the people who say it. So therefore, it's interesting to note, it doesn't say in the Gemara that the rabbi was learning Torah. It says in the Gemara that the rabbi was speaking Torah. I didn't realize I went over time. But to be continued tomorrow, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, everybody. Beautiful. Thank you. Happy you guys, everyone's enjoying it.